going in.
All right, welcome. Thank you for your patience as we move from our work session into here. Welcome to the 6 p.m. City Council meeting. All council members are present. And we will begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Vice Chair White, if you would lead us in that.
Please rise if you are able. And repeat after me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll now have a moment of silence. Thank you. Do we have any acknowledgements from the council? Okay. Okay.
the mercy card.
Oh, yes, an acknowledgement, I guess, with coming up this Thursday, there's the Merci Car celebration, the commemoration of that, and there will be an event that starts, and looks like Councilmember
my
Chiburka
flyer.
has her flyer, so if you
Yes.
would like to share that information.
It's the 75th anniversary of Utah's Mercy Car. It's February 22nd, 2024. It'll be down at the Union Station at 2501 Wall Avenue. And it's at 5 p.m. There'll be an outdoor reception and then a ceremony in the Browning Theater at 6 p.m. and then live music and light refreshments in the lobby at 7.
All right. Sounds great. Next, we have approval of minutes. First, we'll have a special meeting of November 28th, 2023, and regular meeting of December 19th, 2023. Vice Chair White.
Yes, Chair, I've read those and they are accurate.
Next, the joint work session of November 7th, 2023, the regular meeting of November 7th, 2023, joint work session of November 28th, 23, and the work session of December 19th, 23. Councilmember Heyer.
Yes, Chair, I have reviewed those and found them to be accurate.
Wonderful. Joint work session of May 16th, 23, special meeting of the Board of Canvass on September 19th, 23, regular meeting of September 19th, 23, joint work session of October 10th, 23, and a special meeting of October 10th, 23. Councilmember Blair.
Yes, thank you. I have reviewed those and found them to be correct.
And finally, the regular meeting of May 16th, 23, regular meeting of June 6th, 23, joint work session of July 11th, 23, and joint work session of September 19th, 23. Councilmember Chiburka.
Yes, Chair, I've read those minutes and they're accurate to my recollection, and I motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Chiburka and second by Councilmember Blair. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's good. Thank you. Okay, we will first hear from Barton Brierly, who will be presenting in our public hearing on the proposed partial street vacation of Cahoon Street between F Avenue and G Avenue. Welcome.
Thank you. So this is a petition to consider vacating a portion of Cahoon Street. So the portion is just west of F Avenue. It's in West Ogden. Cahoon Street would be 23rd and Half Street, north-south. And it's just a portion of the street. The western portion already has been vacated. There's a rail spur that goes through this property. So the portion west of the rail spur has been vacated, but the portion east has not. So it's an approximately 173-foot long portion, and the petitioners own property on each side of that, and they request that the street be vacated. They would like to consolidate their properties on each side and do a development on that property. The property, they would like to do some sort of mixed use with a rezoning to do individual units with sort of a mixed use with a residence on top and industrial space or flex space below. Here's just a concept sketch of, or concept pictures of the type of development that they would envision on the property. The property is currently zoned single-family residential, so any of that kind of development would require a zone change. The existing Cahoon Street exists only on paper. It's just a vacant field right now. If you go out there and look, you wouldn't know that it's a street. In looking at this project, the main reason we're recommending against the vacation is because of uncertainties with the I-15 24th Street interchange and planning that we would need to do for utilities in the area. UDOT has been working to reconfigure the 24th Street interchange so that you'd be able to get on and off both ways, something that you can't do right now. That would be a very important improvement for Ogden. They've looked at several different configurations and reconfigured things. We also think there'll be a lot of planning needed once they come up with the final design for land use, for access, and for utilities. We would like to do a major water line through the area that would cross the freeway and get to the airport. And we've been looking at different locations for this water line. And it is possible that that might go down the Cahoon Street right away. We don't know yet since we're still doing analysis, and our engineering is starting to look at that and do the analysis. We probably won't know for another year or two the location of that. So in the meantime, we do not want to vacate the street because we want to keep it open so in case that water line needs to go there or other utilities. So we're recommending denial because of that. The applicant has talked about possibly doing a utility easement on the north of the property instead. And at this point, we just can't say that that would work. Doing a bend in a major water line like that is not simple. There's all sorts of considerations you have to do. And so we want to keep the option open for putting the water line through the vacated street. And at the work session, you asked to have a meeting with the applicant. I know the applicant and our engineering did have a discussion with each other, and the position hasn't changed. We do think that it maybe in a year or two we might have more information and have settled on it and might be able to come back with a different recommendation, but at this point we're not recommending approval of the vacation. There are criteria that you would need to address. We actually expanded the criteria with our recent subdivision code amendment, but the main criteria that you would need to make findings on is that neither the public interest nor any person will be materially injured by the proposed vacation, and we do feel that the public interest would be injured by the vacation as not leaving that option open for the water line easement. And we'll note that while you do have to make findings on a vacation, even if all the findings are met, you can still say no. One of the things that came up in the work session was also the property tax. So I ran some rough estimates on what the property tax is. It's about 14,000 square feet, and the amount of property tax we're collecting right now on it is 0 because it's public right-of-way. So there is some advantage at some point if it's not needed to vacate it. If it were developed according to the current zoning, just looking at other properties in the area, there'd be probably about $1,600 in total property tax. About 285 of that would come to the city. If it were rezoned mixed use, that would probably come up to about 7,000 to 9,000 total, with about 1,300 to 1,600 coming to the city. And those are guesses based on other properties in the area. It could be more or less than that. So this has gone to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission's recommending that you not approve the vacation. That concludes our report.
Any questions for Barton from the council at this point? This is a public hearing. Before we hear from the public, though, the petitioner is here, correct? We could, if you'd like to come up and share come on up and state your name for the record or names for the record.
Hi, my name is Luke Kennard. I live in Provo, 4101 North, 140 West, Provo.
And I'm Steve McClary, and I live in Draper, 127 East Wayfield Drive, Draper, Utah.
Yeah, so thank you for a chance to speak tonight. We love Ogden. My wife's from Ogden, and so after our last meeting, we had a little huddle with the engineers after that work session that we had with you guys. In the rain, outside, just on the sidewalk there, it sounded like there could be an option that we could work out a win-win situation. And I think there's just a few main points. You guys have seen the slides, right? We're trying to do residential kind of townhome units with commercial on the ground floor, which creates an affordable stack for both, a small business owner that's, trying to run their business out of their commercial space and live in that stacked part. The main thing that I just wanted to touch on is, so just a couple of reminders, the western portions of Cahoon Street have already been vacated. And so that's just a reminder. There are utility lines currently running along the tracks. There's a sewer line there. And when we propose, so to have the major water line go through Cahoon Street would mean that you would need to acquire the properties on the way down to if I understand correctly, there's a well by the airport that the engineers are trying to connect the main trunk to D Avenue. And so you go from D Avenue to Cahoon Street, and then, Cahoon Street west, south to the airport. If you go west from our property, you hit the church's property first. There's no buildings. It's not going to be a problem. You hit Break Time Bob's property next. He's told us his property is worth $3 million. Then you hit Zach McGowan's property. He got an estimate from a broker that his building's worth $2 million. To run that trunk line west of us would mean that you have to have a 20-foot buffer between the sewer that's along the tracks. And so if you go to the north, you hit the railroads. So our little utility easement solution may not be the best solution. And going straight through Cahoon Street means that those business owners are going to be impacted. An easement going through their property reduces their value and the ability to resell, because the resale client is going to be you guys. You're going to be buying it if there's a water line going through there. It makes it not desirable to be developed. So that's a like $5 million plus ticket to go through that way, right? So when we take a step back, we're like, okay, the option to go straight through there maybe isn't the best option. The option to go north, what we proposed, isn't really a good option for you either. What would be a good solution? So if you're coming from D Avenue down Cahoon Street with that water line, you can turn down F Avenue and hit 24th Street. 24th Street is full of other utilities, what we've talked about with the engineers. And they mentioned it would be about $2.5 million to do that kind of improvement cost down that road. So, but here's the cool thing. 24th Street turns and then it goes down Pennsylvania Avenue, and it's pretty much a straight shot to the airport. So I wish I could show you the map that we drew up with the options that you've got. Besides that, you can come down D Avenue, hit 25th Street, go all the way, avoiding the UDOT road, 24th Street. There is private property on the end. There's no buildings that would intervene, but that is private property. So again, not maybe the best option. The best option seems to be the low. It's like pick your poison, right? You're gonna fight with the railroads, or you're gonna go through private property, $5 million, or go through 24th Street. And it just seems like if you're gonna wait on the railroads, or you're gonna pay a large amount to private property owners, sticking with your own destiny on 24th Street would be the best place for that water line. So there's really like two outcomes of this hearing. It's no vacation, not an option, or I believe an ordinance to potentially vacate it and work it out with the engineers. And so obviously there's more planning that needs to happen, but that would be our proposal, is that the option of going where it, like Cahoon Street as it is, that little piece is going to be really expensive if that's the option. And so it's not a viable option compared to what other options are there.
And from my side, unagendized, honestly, I want to just ask a simple question, because I know my position as a property owner. I've owned property and stuff like that. I'm not a huge fan of what we're proposing here when we have a public infrastructure option available. Plus, traditionally speaking, I've done this for a long time. What you have is development year over year that offers you better solutions over time. And what you guys are saying is this little 170-foot area is so crucial to this infrastructure that you'll potentially maybe need to earmark it and use. You know, that's not really how development has worked in the past. Normally, over the next 15, 20 years, as they try to figure out UDOT, the intersection and stuff like that, there will be better opportunities that will be presented to you that you don't have to, because the last thing you guys want to really do is eminent domain, already vacated areas. And break time, Bob is here for the same reason, because we reached out to him because if I'm on their side of it, I mean, realistically, you're talking the railroad and you have an offset because you have to work with the railroad and having utilities outside of their easements. And then you have a sewer line, and then you have to have a 25-inch line that has a separation off of your sewer line. So off of that, and then your water line on top of that has to have an offset that comes in even more encroaching onto their angular property right here, which almost eminent domains the entire property. And so from their side of it, legally, if I'm them, are you doing a material harm to the community and me? Absolutely. When there's $2.5 million worth of infrastructure, you're scared of going down what's already been set up as a main corridor. We're in Eden, Utah right now, having to do the same thing to pipe from the reservoir up. And what we've done is we've used all the roadways because we didn't want to hurt the community private rights sector, because I've been there. And that's what this is saying, what you guys are trying to say here, and you're saying, and they keep saying, the engineers, love them to death, but they keep saying, well, this is our property. Great, but you're subjecting your property on everybody else to the west as soon as you say that. You've already vacated all the other property. And that for me just feels not in the spirit and light in which I do things, me personally. And so from my side of it, I'm just looking at this and going, you know, we proposed to the engineers at MUE, we looked at engineering options to be flexible and try to do this because it's breaking up our property the same as it's going to do to Break Time Bob and Zach. And I just don't understand what the hangup is when you're saying this is our property. That's great, but then you still, even if you do go Cahoon Street, you're still going to have to buy other people's property at a market value that's more expensive than the 2.5 million that they're talking. They're going to have to go through 24th Street, and that's what they're saying is really another option. They're saying that 2.5 is more expensive. Well, private property in the process of eminent domain in that practice from the city side is going to be more costly and time legal and purchase. But throwing that aside, we honestly are willing to even see if we can't figure something out with the engineers. We reached out to them this week after we chatted with them over the last meeting or after the last meeting, and see if there's something to work out in not fragmenting the property and hurting us that way, and rather pushing the same footage up a little bit, which we figured out with another engineer that it is possible that they could put the angles on it. They assessed that they could also in our conversation to be able to do something like that. They don't want to do that. They'd rather a straight shot. I get it, but we're being accommodating. But honestly, if I'm being candid, even the option that we're proposing of the MUE to the top and stuff still hurts when you look at the offsets from railroad to sewer to water line to off of that to what's buildable. We're eminent domaining, and we're offering you guys to eminent domain their property just the same. So that's pretty much our thought process. And the only other thing that I wanted to do was read Zach. Unless Zach, are you here? Zach McGowan, you're not here. He wrote a letter and he wanted us.
Who is that?
Zach's so west of us is the church.
Who's the
Church of God,
petitioner?
Ebenezer. That's us.
That's us.
And then
Then Zach
Break
can't
Time
talk.
Bob's.
Yeah.
And Zach,
have a letter.
he
He's
wrote
not
a
gonna be
letter.
here.
So
He couldn't make
you're
it.
welcome to send that to us,
Can
and
we-
we
and you
appreciate what
guys
you've
read
shared.
that?
Yeah,
Cool.
you can send that to us for sure.
Cool.
So this is a public hearing. So at this point, we're going to move to and welcome everybody who's come and see a lot of new faces in the area or out here. So thank you for coming. Just as a reminder, we desire. This is an opportunity to address the council on this particular issue. We always would like to have an atmosphere of mutual respect and civility during the proceedings, and that we also want to make sure everyone feels comfortable in sharing their opinions without any just feeling comfortable sharing their opinions. So we don't allow clapping, shouting, or booing during our public meetings. So we'll have 3 minutes per person if you'll come and just state your name for the record. And if you're online, you can raise your hand or *6 to come off or to request to speak. So.
Hi, Travis Pate, Ogden resident. I had the opportunity to review this pretty significantly in regards to just having been in waterline construction. As soon as you bend a pipe, you have then now components, so that could lead to wear and tear. You have to do thrust blocks. You've now ended one pipe and bent it, and then you start another pipe, and then you bend it again, and so you now have that many more components that can go wrong. And especially with the water pressure, and the amount of water pressure that comes in, as soon as you start bending water, it's a significant strain engineering-wise. And so as far as a matter of aspects of dividing a property, it's currently divided. If I were to buy on two sides of the street and then ask the city for the street closure, that's my right, but it's also the right of the city to say, you purchased on two sides of the street. And so it can be done in phases in the same dynamic. Build one phase on one side of the street, one phase on the other side of the street, and then if there is means and reason for a street closure, then you just fill in the middle block. It's just called infill housing. I think that it's more simply done. And the reason, as far as Cahoon Street, we just go back to 2018 when we actually even acquired a lot of that property. It was just basically Weber County sent us a list and said, here's a whole bunch of islands and annexation of Island A, and you look right there and there's Cahoon Street. We've only owned the property for only a few years, so to think that we vacated portions is possibly not accurate because we didn't own the property until 2018. And so I think the dynamic of just actually saying the engineering, we engineer it over under 24th Street, then we have to talk to the state every time we want to do something or repair or any of those other types of things. And the state, at least for 12th Street, how big a concrete piece you have to pull out to patch, it's pretty significant cost for simply repair work under a state road. And the dynamics are different for ours, obviously, but once you cut a pavement, you decrease the life of that road. And so for the state to engineer it, it would be premature to do it at this point. I would say I'd wish the petitioner well, build on either side of the street, and then if it warrants, then they could come back at a later date to petition saying, oh yes, we did engineer around this particular aspect, but we already own it. It would be foolish to try to buy it again or sell it and then realize that we made a mistake because UDOT came back with the wrong answers for us. So it'd be premature to do it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Anybody else who would like to address the council on this issue?
My name's John Macedoni. I'm a resident of Ogden, owner of a business in Harrisville. Anyway, I do a lot of business with Break Time Bob, and I mean, I would hate for his place to get eminent domained, because I mean, he's pretty much a medium-sized business, and he brings in probably as much property taxes that Cahoon's place. And anyway, I would go for the denial, but because I don't think it should be eminent domained. And for anybody who's been eminent domained, you know that you're just not going to get as much as what you should. So that's all.
Thank you.
My name is Tyler Gray. I'm actually the owner of the property. And I'm all for UDOT making a new on and off ramp there. And I want to work with the city as much as possible to be able to have the right of way of water for whatever purposes need presented. I really hope that we can work together throughout this process and really make it happen on any way possible. I'd hate to see any of my neighbors lose some of their property for a water line. I know that has nothing to do exactly with our development that we're trying to do, but I would like to see everyone be happy with the results of our development. The city would be happy with our development, and everybody work out whatever issues that we have here that would just be able to develop and make life better for everybody and everything. So thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
Good evening. Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. This one's a little hard for me because if you know me, you know I'm obsessed with housing, workforce housing, and different types of housing models available for purchase. So initially, I'm like, yes, more housing for purchase. However, it's my opinion and many people's opinion that government's first job is to provide infrastructure, public safety, and access to utilities, and everything else is really nice and a great reason to live somewhere. And I support the Planning Commission's denial of this petition because we are growing, and we are growing very, very quickly. And there is a certain sporting event that is coming to town, and we are going to not only have to provide for our residents housing and places to do business, but we're going to have to go outside of that for this sporting event that's coming. And that's going to put a strain on our infrastructure. So I applaud the Planning Commission for slowing things down and being really judicious when it comes to infrastructure, because this is the kind of thing that really gets costly if you get it wrong. And I encourage the Planning Commission and the Planning Department and the Council to consider some of Travis's suggestions of offering to work with the petitioner within phases. The thing that I would hate to happen is for a petitioner to feel as if there's a wall at the city. And I've supported the new administration because I believe that administration is committed to removing the wall that was there. So perhaps to encourage the petitioner to work with the city, to try to build in phases, and to can still be welcome and still make sure that developers coming here feel as if they are being seen and heard. But I also, again, fully support the Planning Commission and recommend denial of this particular version of this project. Thank you.
My name's Robert Stark, Break Time. I've been there quite a few years, and the roads are getting narrower. The roads are getting wider, the properties are getting narrower. The congestion there is terrible every night, every day, and every morning, every night. You can't get in. You can't even get out. You can't even get out of the business to go turn left, turn right. The roads are. It's a mess. They plan on bringing the roads across the street to the shop for the exit off of by the American Legion there. That's supposed to be the exit for the freeway. The Grants Range Bowl is supposed to be the entrance to the freeway. You can't even get over the bridge. You know, the traffic's backed up. They're going to put a bigger bridge in to make traffic go through there for the entrance to Ogden. It's turning into a big mess there. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Rob. Anybody else like to address the council on this issue? Take a motion.
Chair, I'd make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Graff to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you for all who came and shared your thoughts with us. Certainly, we always want to make sure we're accessible. If you can reach out to us on the phone, you can email us. If you feel like there's more you wanted to say or share, certainly that's always going to be the case. What we have before us today is just a petition to potentially deny. There's a few options, not just, there's more than a couple. Deny the petition, table or extend for consideration, or request an ordinance be drafted to vacate that. And so with that, any discussion or comments or questions?
I have a question,
Councilmember
of course.
Chaburka.
Thank you so much, Chair.
Yes.
I wanted to hear a little bit more about the eminent domain issue. I mean, I haven't heard us talk about that, but I'm hearing the audience, people are very concerned about eminent domain. Just want to make sure I understand this.
Thank you.
So just what eminent domain is would be when the city goes in to purchase property.
But I don't know why they
Yes.
think we're going to do eminent domain on them.
Our concern is if we vacated the street and then we had to come back and purchase it, then that could potentially be eminent domain. I know the applicant has come up with a plan that the city hasn't come up with that could possibly do a water line through other properties. And so they have suggested that if we did that, that there would be requirement for an eminent domain. We have not mentioned that ever. That's just something that the applicant has.
Why they were under that impression.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or on this side?
Just as for a discussion amongst ourselves.
Sure.
Regarding this. It sounded, well, I don't know if it sounded like this or not. It sounded like maybe there was some potential that between our engineering staff and the petitioner, that they could maybe work something out at some point. If we had to decide today, I would probably vote to deny the vacation. But if there's some potential that something could be worked out in the future, I'm happy to extend this for that discussion, and an extension would give them as much time as they wanted, and then it could be brought back. It wouldn't settle it soon, but it would also not require the petitioner to refile.
To start over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I would propose. It's not a motion yet. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so.
Any other thoughts on that?
I agree.
I appreciate you saying that. I feel like I tend to agree. If we were to vote tonight, I don't think I would feel comfortable moving forward. I would also vote to deny. But if it sounds like both sides have communicated to each other, there's an avenue for communication, and if something can be worked out, I think that would be great. But it just feels like we're getting many different scenarios wrapped up into one, and I don't think that there's a lot of validity to what another option would be right now. So I agree. I'm happy to extend this and allow those conversations to take place, and then if something can be worked out, then that allows them to start from that point moving forward, not starting from the starting point.
Vice Chair White?
Yeah, so I just have a question, and I don't know where it fits in this, but we're at zoned R16. Do we, I thought that usually we have a more, I don't know, complete zoning change that comes forward with us in these types of situations where we might do a vacation. Because at this point, I would definitely choose to deny it, because we're not looking at, I mean, they're looking at changing the zoning of it, and I'm once it's in their hands, they can do whatever they want with it, with that R1 zone. So I guess don't we normally have them come together with a vacation?
Look over here at our planners here.
They can, and I think in the past it's happened before, but in this case, it's the process in which that the applicant has chosen to take this. I think they realize at some point, if they want to do what they want to do, which was in the presentation that you saw a few weeks ago, that this portion of road will need to be vacated. And so I think they just understood that it needed to happen and figured that's cheaper and takes less time to do a rezone. And it was worth it to them to ask the question. So it can come at the same time, but it doesn't always come at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, the fact that once the street's vacated, then it can develop according to the current zoning. And I love the idea of the project. I love the idea of the development that could happen down there. Everything's being proposed. It does seem to be a great thing for Ogden. So just I think getting all the pieces in place. I like several mentioned, would probably vote to deny just based on what we have right now. But I am also in favor of extending if we can maybe give it more time to figure out how we develop it all together.
Chair, I would make that motion then. Well, I'm not want to interrupt you. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, I just want to. Thank you. I just want to commend Luke and Steve and Tyler. Thanks for coming forward. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. And I agree with our chair that I think this is a great project. I think some work needs to be done, and just encourage you to do that, because this could really be beneficial. This would be a nice project for you. But I agree that there's too many loose ends for the city for us to move forward at this time. So maybe that extension is a good idea. So thank you.
Then, Chair, I'd make a motion that concerning this proposed vacation of portion of Cahoon Street, that we extend this discussion to allow the parties, the engineering for Ogden City, to work with the petitioners to see if there is some method by which it can work for both sides. And that's my motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember Myers to extend the proposed street vacation of Cahoon Street to give us some time. This is a roll call vote. Oh, this is a voice vote. Okay, yes, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
I think, just as a follow-up, I think I would like to hear from engineering as well, as part of the,
Absolutely.
no offense from planning, engineering was referenced a few times, so I just would like,
Not necessarily at this time, but yeah, in our follow-up, that would be great. Thank you.
And Chair Ritchie?
Yes.
It might be helpful to explain what extend means, because it's kind of a unique procedural thing that we do here. So if the council were to table the item, they would have a date certain. When you extend it, there's not a date certain. It allows the parties to get together and work together to see when a good time. It might take 6 months, it might take a year, it might take a week. So what will happen is at the next regular meeting, which is actually March 12th, council staff will come back with a proposed timeline. In this case, it will probably be a little bit open, right? So that just because this is a difficult issue and there are some other parties you want to hear from, but that's the procedure.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Janine.
and Chair, just another follow-up, and I think Councilmember Heyer said it, is that then you don't have to go through a repetition, and so we're just trying to not have you do that if there's a compromise.
Right. Chair, if I could just add
Yes,
one
Glenn.
quick thing to what Janine said. Another part of extending an item is that we send out a new notice. So if, as Janine mentioned, if we table it, everybody would know the date because it's open. That was the compromise, is that we would send out another notice, so all the folks would get a notice again when this comes back to a meeting.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our fifth item on the agenda, we have reports from the Planning Commission. We'll have Deputy Planning Manager Joe Simpson, sure enough, come on up and talk to us about the proposed rezone of 218 Chester Street.
Awesome. Wonderful. Council, it's good to be with you tonight. Thanks for having me. So this, as mentioned, this petition is a rezone, and we're looking at a rezone from an R16 to our new R2S zoning, and this is to allow townhome development on a property here off Chester Street. Chester's not a common road, but this property is located close to between Grant and Lincoln, just off of 9th Street. And so what is being requested is taking really this larger single-family zone property and providing some infill options for it. It's over 2 acres in size and located in the Lynn Community Plan. The intent is that they would be able to develop a townhome project, and that would be what would be pursued if rezoning is approved. Just to give some aspect to this, there is 2 parcels that make up this property, and those would have to be done as part of a subdivision, put together and platted out. The property is also accessed through a right-of-way off of 9th Street, and that's currently serving an existing single-family home on the property. The applicant has indicated that they would be keeping that existing single-family home. It's in really good condition, and they'd like that to remain, and then develop townhomes with the development. As far as regards to the easement on the property, was not able to find anything as far as recorded on title, but do know that there is an established easement, either prescriptive or easement by necessity. Just give some visual of this. The property's situation is where it's located with single-family homes kind of generally to the east of it, and then To the west of the property is recently developed some townhome projects, some apartment projects. There's also commercial. We have Wall Avenue as well. This is a concept plan, and in no ways is this what the final product would be, but just to give an idea of units that could be developed on the property. And then again, showing on the top left there, the retention of the existing single-family home on the property. And just idea of looking at townhomes with attached two-car garages. So what I love to talk about is this new R2S zoning. It is a two-family zoning and small lot residential zone. So what this means is either single-family lots can be developed on it that are much smaller in area size, like 2,500 square foot lot area size, which sometimes the size of people's homes themselves. And so it allows for a lot more density. It also allows for an option with townhome type developments, attached single family row housing, we call it. The condition of that under this zoning is the individual units do have to be subdivided individually so they have individual ownership of each unit. So it can't be a large rental property that's all under one single ownership. So some of the things that the commission has looked at is, the situation of the property, and this property is uniquely isolated from the neighborhood right now. It's really a large vacant piece surrounded by developed property. And these can be very tricky to develop and trying to find access to them and running utilities and things of that nature to support development. Single family oftentimes can be difficult, in that you're not able to get enough density to make the cost of creating all those necessities of utilities and access to make a project work. With this new zoning, it allows some density, but allows to create residential where there's more owner occupation opportunity in the area, which adds compatibility to the neighborhood. Additionally, whether this is done with single family lots or if to be done with individual townhome units, they would have to be developed under a private subdivision, which would have requirements for common area and open area. This particular project would require a group dwelling, which has standards in place. In fact, we're going to be talking about group dwelling standards later, that will require buffering and screening to be in place to add compatibility with the project with the surrounding developed properties. So one other thing to point out, the commission found that having this R2S zoning creates a good transition between single family residential zoning that we have to the north and south and to the east, with the multifamily and commercial that is developed and exists to the adjacent west. And so that's one provision we look at, is creating these transitions and these buffering between different uses. The other is that it needs to follow property lines. See many a problem with split zone properties. There's lots of problems that come with them, and this proposal would follow the perimeter of the property and follow those property lines. The other thing pointed out already is the isolation of the lot and the difficulty of developing infill. This will require, access to be maintained to the property for those units, but also require the addition of pedestrian access to be put in place that ties the development with the surrounding neighborhood. And then finally, as we try to look at the Lynn Community Plan, there isn't really a lot available there to look at. It is an older plan. 1986 was a while ago, so it really has there's our old R2 zoning, which is long since gone. But the commission and staff have felt with the criteria and provisions of the general plan that there is support to have this zone of the property to R2S. So with that, the Planning Commission recommends that you approve the rezoning from R16 to R2S.
Thank you. Any questions for Joe before we accept public input on this item? Sure.
So, Joe, you mentioned the cost of bringing utilities into that property if it were developed differently for individual residential homes.
And that may be the case. That's often a problem that we have with infill. It's just getting to run utilities, and you may only be able to get a couple of homes, and the cost to put in those kind of utilities to support the development or to put in a long access, you may have to do fire hydrants, and all these things add up that may prohibit a development from occurring. And so that's one benefit to this R2S zoning, is allowing infill that's more compatible in these type of environments.
So is that development cost something that a developer would want to undertake if he had enough homes there? Or
Yeah, and that's why I think the beauty of the R2S zone is it does allow more density, but puts restrictions of how the properties are owned and the units are owned to support that development of these kind of more challenging properties that we commonly find in the city.
Joe, you've probably done this calculation, and I might have asked before, but what's about how many units can you get on an R2S versus an R16?
An R16 would require, at a minimum for interior lots, 6,000 square feet, 7,500 for corner lots. R2S, whether it's single family or townhomes, it's 1 per 2,500 square feet.
So how many units is that?
Yeah.
Does this R2S allow stacking? Does that work in this?
To have a unit above another unit? No.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes sense.
We do also have the petitioner here, so actually before we receive public input on this, if we could have the petitioner come and speak to this. If you would just introduce yourselves for the record.
Sure will. Thank you. Respected council members, my name is Gary Cannon. I live at 1397 West, 13400 South, Riverton, Utah, not Riverdale. So I have
a little
bit of a drive, so yeah. Thank you. I'm also on the Planning Commission in my city, so I respect the effort and the time you put in.
Rick Southwick, 2532 Fillmore Avenue, Ogden.
We were contemplating letting any of the residents and neighbors, we were going to defer to them and let them speak first, but I think we may answer a few questions that they may have. We are, this is going to be a individually owned property. We're not building this for rental. The property to the west of us are townhomes, and they were built for rental purposes. Nothing wrong with that. Most people need to start off renting, and this is not one of those. This is where we want people to start off owning. I'd like to give you some statistics that just came out last week. I'd like to give you a little bit of a blueprint on what the state of Utah is, what you may or may not have read or heard on the news. I'm very proud of the fact that my wife and I have 5 children. I'm very proud of the fact that we have a house large enough to house 3 of our older children. I'm not happy with the fact they can't buy a home, but I need to give you some numbers so you know what the real reality of the world we live in right now is. And I apologize, I'm a little bit hoarse. The inversion kicks my butt, so I'm down my way. It's a lot worse than up here. To buy a $500,000 townhome in Salt Lake County right now, your mortgage payment would be $4,100 a month. Now, $500,000, $4,100 a month. On top of that, you have to make $110,000 annual income. I don't know too many 21 and 22-year-olds that make that kind of money. I know my children don't. So we're happy the fact that we have a house large enough to house 3 of them. Last week, we listened to the governor in a conference we were in, and he made a very bold statement when he said 75% of the eligible property owners in the state of Utah, if they did not already own a home, could not qualify for a median-priced home in the state of Utah. I found that very profound, that 75% of the people in the state can't afford to buy a home if they didn't already own one, if they didn't already have an address and hadn't got some equity built already. On top of that, a more disturbing figure is that's generally 2 incomes that get you there, and a very large amount of people, homeowners, up to 20% of their gross income is going to daycare right now. We're in a very interesting time, and we're trying to fill that gap. This is an infill project, which does come with some challenges. We do need you to know that any improvements are done to this property, they will be brought up to city standards. We're not going to leave anything in place that will not accommodate what the city requires us to do. We're very proud of this project. We will also like you to know that we have been soliciting builders that reside in the Ogden area. We're not looking at selling that. Now, this could change. You know, if we can't find anybody, there might be one of the volume builders from out of state come in. But a couple of gentlemen that we met with today are residents of Ogden, and they've done a couple of great projects here. Again, it's an owner-occupied, not a low-income project. It's going to be affordable housing, and it's not going to be sold to an investor or to a large group of people to rent out. Rick?
Mr. Simpson mentioned not able to see access. There is a deeded right-of-way. It's recorded on the property to the west, and that was done when the prior owner sold that western piece. So there is deeded right-of-way access for this. So that issue is not a problem at all. And we're just excited with this. I think this R2S zone that the council approved recently is one of the best things going in the state of Utah, and we're just tickled to be able to bring a product forward that will help our kids and our grandkids embrace the American dream and have the opportunity to own a home here in Ogden. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last point, and I've never heard this used before. One of the planning commissioners used the word historic. We realize this is the very first time this has been presented to you as a council, and one of the commissioners said this is historic for the city of Ogden. And I've never heard anybody say that. I was very proud of the fact that somebody would use the word for that. So hopefully this will be a tale of, we're going to set the bar high and make you guys proud of this as well.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioners from
Chair,
the council?
I
Yes,
do.
Councilmember Heyer.
And it isn't that I don't trust you at all, but you mentioned a couple of weeks ago in the work session that this was important to you, and I believe that it is. What tools are you going to use to make sure that these are purchased? I mean, are you going to do deed restrictions? How are you going to do that?
The zoning requires that they be individually platted.
Right.
And so we'll be marketing them. And the other thing that the legislature passed last year, I'm trying to remember how many million there's grant money available for first-time purchases of new construction property. and 60% of that money is still available from last year, which tells us that very few builders are building at that, below that threshold of, was
You
it
recall, was it-
500,000?
Was like 400 and, yeah.
So, I mean, depending on what inflation does and costs do, but we're hoping that these will come in the low 400s, and depending on what the final design is, maybe under 400. So as a planning commissioner over the last 3 or 4 years, I think we've approved over 2,000 units in Ogden. Of those, I can only think of one project that ended up on the market for owner occupancy, and that's the townhomes that have just been finished on 16th and Harrison. We just went through those, looking at those. It's a fantastic product, and the developer there said that of the units that have been on the market and sold, 18 have sold, 17 of the 18 are owner occupied. The 18th is a second home for someone from out of state. So I think that speaks well for what we're trying to do, and that we need a lot more of this in Ogden.
Well, I salute you for your proposal. I'm excited for this kind of a development going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will put deed restrictions in place if it's needed. I don't know by law what that looks like, but we're in real estate.
We don't either.
Yeah. We've done it. I've done it before I've seen it done, but it will definitely be done.
Great.
We don't want to be
Thank you.
apartments. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
No, thank you. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Jared, looks like you've got something to say, come on up, and then we'll take public input on this.
Just real quick, I'd like to mention to the council in consideration of this item, one of the things that we could do that we have not done, but we could talk to the petitioner about potentially doing a development agreement and along the lines with this rezone to ensure that these are owner occupied and it's not a for sale or rental item that would go with it. If, we could talk to them about that. Just wanted to bring that up, that is a possibility of something we could look at and discuss too.
May I ask a question about that?
Yes, go ahead.
But that wouldn't control what happens after somebody purchases it, right? It's not like a deed restriction.
No, it's not a deed
It's just
restriction that
what they're
necessarily
going to
gets,
do with it
but it
and then-
would be something voluntarily that the developer could sign that would ensure that that is the model that they are
Right.
producing and what their intent is to do. But yes, future ownership, once it's sold and out of their hands, without the deed restriction, you couldn't actually do it inevitably, but it's something you could do on that first sale.
Yeah, and I guess this is just my own comment. I'll wait on my comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if you'd like to come and address the council on this item, you'll have 3 minutes. And again, just please be respectful and state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Denise Goddard, 206 9th Street. So we are the west corner of that entrance on Chester. So when they put in the 9th Street townhomes, they said those were going to be sold. They're rented. So I would really hope that you do make sure those are sold, so we don't have trouble with that change. Also, we were told that street, Chester, was going to be no parking, but there is no sign that says no parking. There's no red curb that says no parking. And that's because the street is too narrow to have parking, as well as have a fire truck go back there for their safety. We would like not to have that back there with 31 or whatever the number is going to be, apartments, because they will all come right by our house, which is closest to our bedrooms. And that was built in the 60s. Anyway, the pictures show they're 3-story. We're being told they're 2-story. Why are the pictures showing they're 3-story? When they say, oh, well, we didn't put the right picture. Why, with all the technology and with the ability of realtors and so forth, why? Is it 3-story because the parking's gonna be on the bottom and then 2 more stories on top, which will then block more of our view for the mountain? It shows, I believe, 10 parking spaces for the 30-some units. for visitors. Behind us, we have 15 townhomes that have 7 parking spaces that are already being used by the 15 people who live there because, or 15 units that are back there, because it's 2 parking spaces per each of those 15 condos. But there's no place else for them to park. So those 7 were supposed to be for visitors, but they already have someone there because they're 3-bedroom apartments. So of course, you're going to have a teenager there or a third person renting or whatever, or living there. So where are they going to be parking if they're not allowed to park in their units, on the property, on the west or the east of Chester, and they're not allowed to park on Chester itself, then are they going to all be up and down our street? Which, that's public property. They can, but then where are the residents going to have the extra people when they have people over? So those are my questions and my thoughts, and my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy Moss. I live at 180 Chester. So I'm behind the 15 townhomes that were built that are just adjacent to the 218 property. I just wanted to mention something about this property. A precedent was set by Ogden City. When Judy built this house, the house that's currently on the property, she was restricted from building any larger of a home because she did not have frontage property. So I don't know why that you would allow more building on the same property if the precedent was already set that she couldn't even build bigger than the original property, or the original home that was there. So that precedent is what, to me, the only thing that's changed is the ownership to Mr. Southwick, who's on the Planning Commission, which seems to be a conflict of interest here for me. The other thing is Mr. Southwick has also said that he was going to price these around $400,000, which would be higher than the homes that are in this area already. So to me, that's attracting only investors that are going to subsequently rent these homes they are not going to be owner occupied because our area doesn't attract people with that level of income. So that's what I have to say, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. We have a petitioner or not a petitioner, we have a citizen online, Jamie Duarte. We'll go to that next.
Hello. Hi, I'm Duarte, spelled like Jamie, so I understand. I live on 250 9th Street. So you're adding all these new homes, all these new cars that are going to be coming. So you're adding, say, 2 cars per household, probably 3. That's 90 new cars that will probably be, if not more, that are going to be coming down that little hill that's right in front of my house. That they're gonna have to go down. When that hill freezes, I always get cars in my front lawn. My neighbor's house has already been rammed into by a dump truck. So we are adding all these new cars. Plus, we're also adding down my street 2 apartment complexes that are already adding even more cars. How are you guys going to give me the safety of my family and my child and my wife that we're going to be able to live safely and no one's going to come plowing into the front of my house when you're adding all these new houses? I've given them the option if they wanted to buy my property so that they could have a straight drive right into their houses. But that's something that still has to come up and something that has to be drawn up. But other than that, I'm expecting a whole bunch of cars coming into my front yard and maybe through my living room. And I really do not want that. I don't know how you guys would feel about having a car drive through your front door. I don't think anybody would want that. I'm worried for the safety of my family when you keep adding more and more vehicles driving through a street that's not supposed to be handling so many vehicles. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Jaime. Sorry for mispronouncing your name as Jamie, but thank you, Jaime, for your comments. Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else here in that would like to address the council?
My name is Bart Wallace. I live at 242 9th Street. This proposal is right in my backyard. I think it's a crime if somebody from Riverton comes up to this area and loads apartment buildings. I'm going to call them apartment buildings because that's what they are, glorified apartment buildings. If the city would allow them to build a nice little subdivision back there of single-family units to where they would be able to buy a home, take pride in it, have a yard for their kids, I would be all for that. There's a little subdivision just off of 12th and Monroe called Deer Walk or Deer Run. I don't remember which one. It's a really nice little subdivision. They could do the same thing on this lot as what they did there. And I believe that if the developers weren't so hell-bent on building these townhomes, they could see that it would be easier for them to sell nice individual houses than it would be to sell a townhome. It would make the neighborhood safer because we were promised that the townhomes that were already built just west of there, we were told that they would be sold and not rented, but we were lied to by the Planning Commission, and that makes me very upset. But it only makes sense to build. I mean, it's going to bring down our property value. If I wanted to sell, or when I want to sell my home, somebody walks into my backyard and sees this monstrosity amount of townhomes, they're not going to want to buy my house. It's going to bring our property tax down, or property value down. So, as a resident of Ogden, I'm asking and I'm praying that the city council just allows them to build single-family housing and not put the townhomes back there. Please. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bart.
Hi, I'm Jana Bostic. I live at 263 9th Street. That hill that Jaime was talking about is right next to my house on the west side, and it is really dangerous. Any more traffic on the street, you already can't let your kids outside to play in the front yard. There's so much traffic, and they go up that road 90 miles an hour. You can hear them, and just watch them zoom by the house. That road is already dangerous enough. If we could just leave this for single-family homes and not put that much more traffic down our street, it would help us out a lot for the people who already live there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna.
I'm Josh Felix. I live at 269th Street, and I'm with everybody else on not doing this because of the traffic that is already on this road is just, it's crazy. And like she was saying, you know, we can't let our kids play out front really in fear of who knows what's going to happen on the road because it's so busy already. It's right between Washington Boulevard and Wall and the hill, like everyone's talking about. I've been in this house for 15 years, and last winter, the gentleman that called, there was 3 cars in his yard at the same time last winter. And I just feel that any more traffic on this road would not be good.
Thank you, Josh.
Good evening. My name is Fred Goddard, 206 9th Street. I live with Denny on the corner of Chester and 9th. I'm talking about infrastructure. You know, we talk about that all the time. I'm all for affordable housing and all that, but we've talked about that little Chester Street being 2 lanes. We've already got 31 cars coming in off that new area that they built. Now we're going to add another 30 or 40 cars coming off that area. My bedroom's right there. I get to hear the little bottle rockets when they come in at night. We hear that every night. But as far as the other gentleman just said, if it'd be single-family homes, that would be fantastic. But like I said, they built the 2 stories right behind us that the council approved. I used to have a beautiful view of Ben Lomond. I used to watch the sunsets, sit in my chair, retired, enjoying it. I can't see that anymore. Now I have a big white building through out my window. When the sun hits that, it's like snow blindness. I can't even have my drapes open during the day. I have to close them during the day because I can't see. Same thing's going to happen to all these people a little further down on the west. If they build these 3-story condos, and if they allow them to paint them white like they did the ones behind me, they're going to have the same issue. They're going to lose their view, their serenity, and we talk about the dream, the American dream. Have a home that you can enjoy and look out. Well, you guys are building these big condo. It looks like Ukraine around here. All these buildings you're letting them build. Just down to us from us on Wall Street and 9th. You're going to have another 100 units in there. So 9th Street, a little 2-lane street, you're going to have, another 200 cars coming in and out of there. And we have a little daycare center where there are kids being loaded and unloaded during the day. The traffic is ridiculous, and it's going to get worse. So just take that into account, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
My name is Mr. Haddon. I live at 236 9th Street. These proposed townhomes are going up right in my backyard. Okay. Number one, I'm going to have these big blaring lights right in my back of my house. Okay. The traffic is off the hook. The fire possibilities of fire. One of these units catch on fire, the next one's going to catch on fire, and the next one's going to catch on fire. My house could possibly catch on fire. I agree with Mr. Wallace there as far as somebody from Riverton coming over here to develop property in your town, not ours, okay? If you guys don't put the brakes on this development in Ogden, Ogden's going to be just like Detroit. And you guys know it as well as I do, that, all these buildings going up and all this, development, somebody's getting paid. Okay, I'm not getting paid. I want to know who I send the bill to for the money that I'm going to lose on my house, my property. I mean, it's already going down. You put these monstrosities in my backyard, and I'm going to lose, I don't know how much I'm going to lose. So who do I send the bill to? I'm sorry, I'm trying to bite my tongue, but these poor guys that got those townhomes built in their backyard, I feel sorry for them. Well, I'm about to endure the same problem. Okay, you guys want to build townhomes there in my backyard? You come down there. You buy my house from me, and you come down and live there and see how you like it. It's not right, You guys don't. None of you guys live down there, do you? Any of you live down there? I think not. Okay, so if you guys really want to buy those or build townhomes, buy my home for me for twice, double what it's worth, so I can go somewhere and buy a house and be comfortable. I'm almost to the point of being restricted to my house because of my health conditions, and so my quality of life has gone from here to here, and it's going to go even lower with these townhomes. And if there's going to be the traffic, the crime, the fire, the noise. Right now on my surveillance cameras, I got video of people coming into my yard late at night, snooping around. Okay, it's only going to get worse. And if you guys think that those are only going to be owner occupied, you're up in the night because they're going to rent them. And I'd like to sit here and say more, but I apologize for my heated opinion. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yeah.
Hi, Travis Pate. I had the understanding that we should not spot zone And yet this is exactly what this is. It's a spot zone. And that's the dynamic that we're now getting rid of, with even Weber County giving us the property in 2018. We were decreasing spot zoning, and we were going to say it's zones for its surrounding area. We have some in my neighborhood that were basically, said, oh, we got these two properties now isolated. In April last year, we changed them over to the neighboring zoning, even though the neighboring zoning was the original zoning that these properties have. As far as ownership, deed restrictions, CC&Rs, those types of things, we have the Jefferson townhomes, which are obligated through the CC&Rs to be owner occupied, unless you're military, active duty military, or some other dynamic that shows that you're serving our country, obviously. And yet, how many of those are not owner occupied? A plethora of those. And how few have business licenses to actually rent them? Very minimal. But the city has no teeth. Oh no, that's a civil matter. They haven't been up there with code and zoning enforcement to say, you have a rental business license? And then if they don't, then it's, oh, shame on you. Not, hey, let's surrender the amount of profit you made on this and actually double the amount of profit you made on this as a penalty. And so until there's some teeth that enforce the ownership and the deed restrictions, it's not going to matter. The dynamic to me is view corridor and vista preservation is in our community plan. Some of the points as you go through, here's the date and timeline of this property. Some remarkable things have already happened in the Lynn community. And yet we have a outdated map, and then we just pretend that that's sufficient. And look, this is an improvement on our outdated map. It's pretty sad. The Wall Avenue properties, when they came into the Binghamport area, were required, if they had a second floor, it was to be in the roof line. That's what this neighborhood has. Single family homes, detached garages. Just Google Earth. So this either needs to be denied or continued. It needs to be continued for more information, because the Lynn Community Plan has some amazing updates and proposals that both the Weber County Heritage Foundation and Ogden City Landmarks have looked at and approved, because it's a heritage. It's Ogden's oldest community is the Lynn community. And yet, oh, wait, 7% vacant land. We're taking vacant land to shoehorn some density. And I don't think it's fair. Part of the general plan talks about light, and the light that is necessary to come in from the southern exposure, and all of a sudden your backyard's now shadowed because this monolith. So I'd say it either needs to be denied or continued, because more information needs to happen. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. I don't envy you. This is a tough one. You're not going to be able to please everyone. And that's the really challenging part about being where you are, because you have to make decisions that are the best for the Ogden we are, while looking at the Ogden we're going to become as we're growing. I thought it was absolutely wonderful that it was re-upped, that at a 2024 interest rate is at a $500,000 home is a $4,100 payment. And part of the challenge with this code, I'm all for the R2S rezone, and I disagree a little with Travis in the aspect of this is infill. And it's a little different than spot zoning. Spot zoning is just for one person, one property, and usually a business. But we're at a point where we need these changes, and I'm really excited that the planning department is doing an R2S zone. But I think we're not talking about, and I don't know if it's for this one or if it's the next session, is we have to talk about making sure that our code allows for smaller square footage, actual livable unit, home or rental, particularly because at $500,000, that's $200 a square foot. And it's kind of what we're doing here in Ogden. We're building $500,000 homes with our housing funds. And we need some of those, but we also need a lot more workforce, teacher, fire, that type of thing. And so the way to get that to pencil for developers is to allow them to build smaller.
And I know I'm a broken record about Tempe, Arizona and the micro estates, but it was a winner out of the gate and they were sold and waitlisted. And they are 600 square foot Energy Star homes with 900 square foot space. And the FHA minimum property standards for financing is 400 square feet. I mean, the past is not going to be our future. What worked for our parents and our grandparents no longer works. We have to do something differently, and we have to look at being flexible with allowing smaller footprints, which we're doing. It's amazing as far as the actual how many homes can be put on an acreage, and it's a smaller acre. It's a 2,500. That's wonderful. But we have to look at the units. And let me know if you want me to put you in touch with a national lawyer that does restrictive lease covenants, because that is your answer.
Thank you, Angel. All right. Thank you. So I've got a bunch of notes.
Chair, at this point, do we want to close the public hearing?
So it's just a public input, so we won't need to do a motion on that.
Thank you.
But yeah, there's probably a number of questions, and I don't know.
Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
It might be well if we, the petitioner actually wanted to let the people speak. So
Sure.
And then, but they could respond at this point. I think that would be a fair time is to give them a minute to respond to some of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's just kind of was where I was going. Is there's a couple of questions, and I think the petitioners are some that could be answering some of these. So yeah, go ahead and if you would respond to those that you took notes of, and I will try and fill in the rest.
I guess my first comment would be that regardless of whether you like, what you saw was a concept. The zoning allows certain heights. It allows townhomes, duplexes, or these small single-family homes. So we will still have to go through back to work with the planning staff to get plat approval, subdivision approval. So I would encourage you to approve the rezone. Let us go back with the staff and work within the parameters of this R2S zone. As you look at the map, one of the maps of the area shows you the number of developments throughout that neighborhood that are medium density like this is. This isn't high density. When we build these properties, it's going to improve the values in the neighborhood. There are a range of homes in the neighborhood. The thing that's been brought up about the steep hill, that is, I'm trying to think it's a side street. Child's. Well.
Please, excuse me. Please, we're listening to the petitioner. Thank you.
Councilman Myers has a business on Washington, just north of 9th Street. I think he knows the area extremely well. I don't know why anybody would drive up and down that when the conditions are icy. You have the rest of that neighborhood's flat. 9th Street to Wall, 9th Street to Washington, Grant, lots of ways in and out of that neighborhood. I don't see many people in this development going up or down Childs. So I think that's.
May I ask? Can we ask them?
Yes. Any questions?
Sure.
Has there been a traffic study done in that area for the development?
Not yet. Not to my knowledge. I've been there morning, noon, night. It is a quiet neighborhood. Not a ton of traffic anytime I've been there. I'm sure there are times.
Can we just hold on? Sorry, real quick.
Sure.
Brandon, is there a way to get the closed captioning?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
As a citizen, as a member of the planning commission, nobody likes to see change. None of us do. We all wish things could stay the way they were or go back to the past. And the reality of it is that's not an option. What we're trying to do is create the best future for ourselves, for our families, children, and grandchildren. That's, Gary, I don't know what else you want to add.
I was wondering, do you want to speak to your position on the planning commission and how you've been involved in this project? Somebody brought that up.
Sure. I'm in real estate. That's been my career for over 35 years. I think I bring a valuable perspective as a planning commissioner. As a commissioner with a project like this, as anyone would be, I recused myself, was not involved in the deliberation, was not involved in the voting. So that was like any other project. It was presented to the members of the commission that were there. They deliberated. It was a 7-1 vote. I don't have any more say or influence than anyone else on the commission does. So had I been sitting there and voting, I would have had a conflict of interest. By recusing myself, there's not a conflict of interest.
Any other questions before I make a couple points? And thank you.
If you don't mind making a few points, and then, yeah, that would be great.
Thank you. I'll be brief. And I'm very respectful of the fact that the neighbors are here and they do have some concerns. I would be too. So the fact that they have pride in their neighborhood shows a lot about the community. I want to address the fact that I am very proud to be a resident of Utah. Over 50% of the projects we're approving in Riverton City right now are from out-of-state developers, not Utah developers. So the fact that I'm here as a representative of Utah, not just of Ogden City, if I lived in Brigham City or far west, I don't know if that's a close enough community for me to have an input on that. I'd also like to point out a couple other things. The maximum density in this project that we could design a project around would be up to 40 units. We're at 32. So we have put in some amenities that we feel will be a benefit to not just the residents in this project, but in the neighbors too. There's going to be a dog park, a gazebo. There's lots of more than adequate park for what the city requirements are right now. Also, I'd like to point out, this is a concept drawing. Both the concept as well as the house plans are just, we brought those in as something for you to visualize and see what it could look like. There is a maximum height. Another thing I'd like to address is the parking. When parking is calculated in a project, it is not just the non-owners of the property. It's also the driveways. It's also the garages. So if you took those numbers and just for the 2-car garage units, which I believe 90% of them are, 85, 90%, that would give you a total of 4 parking spots in front of every, and I would certainly hope that you wouldn't need to utilize all 4 of those, but the non-resident parking is there for just that non-residents. I'm sure that it gets abused. Do not get me wrong, and we have no control over that. Also, we're kind of proud of the fact that we were designing a product that would be more. The values of the property in there will sell for more than the surrounding neighborhood. That doesn't mean that those properties outside of it are any less than in here, but the fact that we're bringing a product to the market that's over what their values are rather than under is a statement to what we're trying to bring here today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, council members, any discussion or questions for Joe or just discussion amongst the council?
There is a height restriction. What is that height restriction?
Joe, if you can address that.
Of course you can.
Of course you can.
Very good questions. So it's really the same as a R16. It's 2.5 stories or 35 feet.
So I just want to clarify, just to make sure. if I built a single-family dwelling, I could build it as high as the same units these guys are proposing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you talk to the, there's a concern about lighting coming from these buildings, like the shielding or the, what would be required in those cases?
Yeah, so we do have a code that requires light to be contained on the property. And this has been an issue that's come up. We've kind of always had this code, but when issues have come up, we've now require photometric plans with all new developments. And so that shows all exterior lighting. And our policy is that it doesn't exceed more than 1 foot candle across property lines. So that would be held to with the development as well. So we don't have those problems.
So if somebody does have a problem with that, would they call code enforcement?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you have that problem, call code enforcement. Yeah.
And then I think I'll make mention too with the IC roads. I think that also is where it's a city road. We probably need to look at maybe some potential maintenance there. So I've made note of that, and I'll probably reach out to our public works and let them know of those concerns. So.
Is there a traffic study required when they do the development?
They can be required as part of the site plan review, which is something that we would look at if, the rezoning goes in play, then they do all the engineering for the site, and then engineering can require a traffic study if it's deemed necessary.
I was just thinking, especially the conversation about Chester Street and fire access and maybe some no parking needed there or something.
I know
we might
we-
need that already, even without this development.
I can't say that, the petitioners haven't just thrown this at us. They have come with their concept plan to our concept review team. The fire marshal has looked at it. There are some comments that have been made, obviously having the turnarounds, hydrants, things of that nature. But there's definitely have given that information.
Joe, sorry.
Go ahead.
If you are going to look at that, look at some other issues. I do think those were valid arguments about they were told or promised that there would be no parking on that street, and that hasn't happened. I don't know if we could find out more.
I would be happy to look into that. I know it's hard because it's not a public street; it's a private right of way that's actually owned, and so the property has functioned having access to this right of way, as have all the other homes and even the new townhome project that's developed back there. So. And so, we can. I think I definitely need to talk to the fire marshal if there was.
And that was my next point. Is just to double check on emergency services also.
Yeah, and then just to touch on ownership requirements for that development, it should be noted that the group dwelling code that we have and had when that was approved, we don't have any code that requires. Units to be subdivided. A developer may tell us that they're going to do that, but we didn't have any codes until we had this new R2S zone. This is the first zone where it's really a game changer in that amount, in that viewpoint, because it is something that can be required under the zoning code, and so that may help with people understanding that project versus this project in the zoning.
Do I have a question? In the conceptual pictures of the project, slide 25 in your presentation, it shows that these homes are 3 stories, and I'm not sure how that fits in with the 2.5 story.
Yeah, that may be an issue because the half story, there's a definition of that where a certain amount of the story has to be underground, 50% of the adjoining ground, and so that is something we'll have to work with the petitioner on. As they've mentioned, that really isn't a plan that we're reviewing. It's conceptual, just kind of showing that we want to do townhomes, attached single family homes, not apartments, not duplexes, showing what those would kind of lay out. So there's definitely going to be some changes that'll have to be made.
Just to make sure, and that happens, if this were to pass, this is just the rezone. once
Yeah.
the rezone, if this passes, then they would go and work on
Absolutely.
on that
Very good
stuff right there.
question. So, yeah, we would do another notice. There'd probably be a couple. I know of probably there would be at least three that would
Okay.
have to occur. There would have to be a preliminary group dwelling review, a final group dwelling review, and then there would also be a private subdivision review that would have to occur. So there will be three. There's more public meetings to be held. This is just considering is an R2S zone work for this property.
Thanks for clarifying.
You're welcome.
There's just one more question before you leave.
Yep.
I think,
At least one more question.
yeah. So I think Amy Moss mentioned something about the frontage of the property that's there now. What was that, and what?
And the only thing I could think of where it was talking about, she was mentioning an addition restriction is potentially with the size of building, and maybe there was some fire code issue. As far as zoning, it's established that the property has access rights to it. If someone was proposing to create a lot without street frontage, there would have to be a special variance obtained from the Board of Zoning Adjustment. But where this property has established rights and the petitioner has clarified that those are part of the property, then it would allow it to be developed. The only thing I could think of is there may have been some restrictions related to fire or potentially building codes for doing that kind of addition, being so far off of Chester. And it may be that with this townhome project that was recently done, there's improvements or widening with that has maybe made that not the case anymore. But hopefully that answers your question. I'm speculating, but that's kind of what it sounds like.
The only other, I don't really have a question, but the only other comment I have is I just have a very hard time dictating to a private developer that they need to deed restrict or look into deed restrictions when we haven't done that ourselves in our own projects. I mean, I think that's where for me, it's just a personal issue that if we're developing homes that we're saying that are supposed to be a certain range of affordability and we want them only to be for sale, we should probably do that to ourselves before we start doing it to private developers.
It can be very difficult. It comes down to obviously police powers and then, takings, right? And it's the legal term. And so we have to operate within those bounds where we're not taking individual rights. And so that there is some ways around it that have been talked about, like development agreements is one that could be explored. Voluntary deed restrictions could be done, but there's all kinds of legal obstacles that are above my brain that would have to be explored and looked at. I just know we need to be careful with that because there's that potential of takings involved in private property rights.
When you talked about that roadmap going forward, at least 3 additional public meetings,
Yes.
Those would go before the Planning Commission?
Planning Commission.
All 3? Or would
All
they,
3.
Okay. So that would be, okay. And then the other question I had was on Chester Street, where that's the deeded right-of-way. Would there be any adjustment or improvements to that road? Requirements it sounds like it's a pretty narrow road and could...
It is. There probably will have to be some improvements adjacent to we're fronting the property onto that right-of-way for sure. But they would where it's private, there's a little bit more restriction on requirements going all the way out. I know that improvements were required as part of a group dwelling for the already zoned R4 townhome development that occurred, but there would be frontage requirements required under the group dwelling standards, if that answers your question.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Any other discussion?
Chair, I can just share what's in my head as I listen to some of these concerns. The thing about the spot zone is it isn't a spot zone because we created the zone. It's applicable all, it could be applied for anywhere. It wasn't done for this project and only going to be used for this project. That's the definition of a spot zone. It may be the first one to use this zone in the city, but that doesn't make it a spot zone. The higher density that this is going to allow or require, I guess rather, is what is going to make the homes affordable. And without that, this likely wouldn't develop as an R16, just because of the cost of land, and it would be, divided up in fewer parcels. So whoever buys a single family home, I mean, they're gonna have to make some serious dough to buy a single family home in an R16. And so the consequence, I think, and we've seen this in other areas in town, land that's just vacant and fallow tends to have, it gets people in there doing mischief. And I don't know if that's happened yet, but it has happened in other parts of the city where land that is just open, it kind of attracts mischief that may come happen there. Some of it may be not very serious, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it's drugs and, serious things. But anyway, so I that's why I said I really like the idea of the RS2 zone, because it does give us new tools to help to create home ownership, to allow people to start to build some wealth in their life. And we haven't been doing that. I think somebody already mentioned that well, I think it was Commissioner Southwick said we'd approved developments for over 2,000 units in apartment type dwellings. And those people are just at the whim of whatever the rents are going to go up. Every time they can go up, they will. And so it makes it really hard for people to build wealth. So this gives us a tool that I think we haven't had in the past. I looked at the maps on about the icy road. I don't live too far from there, and I've driven that road, and it looks like to me that Childs bumps into the house, and the end of Childs at the bottom of the hill isn't going to change because of this development. This isn't going to cause any change in that. I do have a neighbor that oftentimes has pulled cars out of his front yard. His remedy was a bunch of big piles of rocks in between those things, and I would suggest that something like that might be appropriate in this case. As far as I think it is difficult to go forward, but somebody made the comment that we can't go back, and the reason we can't go back is because we've had a bunch of kids, and we got to put them somewhere. And I don't know where we're going to put them if we don't do stuff like this. I empathize that change is hard. It's a tough thing, but of all the things that maybe could happen, I think this is a good option to explore going forward. That's just how I kind of see I see the picture holistically. I think we've got to do some things like this, R2S zone, to make homes affordable and purchasable.
Okay, yes.
I just want to address the issue of the congestion on the streets on 9th Street. And it's a huge concern, and many of you are neighbors, and I know you and are friends. But I do also want to say that there's that housing or that apartment complex that's going down right across from Children's World on 9th Street. I don't know how many apartments will be there, but that's already taken place, and that's the structure's up and it's building. And I think the congestion from that is a bigger concern to me than what these apartments are, than what these condo or townhomes are. I'm very conflicted because of your comments. But I also just feel like 9th Street is a challenging street. I think that with the new apartments that are going down, and then there's also apartments on that will be developed on Wall, is my understanding. I don't know that for a fact. But there is congestion coming on that street for sure. And I do want to add one thing to Councilman Heyer. I take Childs all the time because I can't cross Wall Avenue going south. And so I take Child up over the hill and down onto 12th Street so I can get the light on Wall to go south.
I have to.
Okay. The congestion is a challenge, but I don't know that that's going to go away. I think with the apartment complexes coming there, that's a bigger challenge. So I empathize with you. That neighborhood's where I grew up, and I love that area. So my heart's with you. But I also see that the wisdom of doing some development there and putting in some affordable housing. So it's a challenging issue that you bring to us today. But thank you.
Thank you. Any other? I just wanted to comment. I see some hands out there. This isn't the time for that. We've already had the public input. There will be another time later for public comments. So I'm not ignoring you on purpose. Or maybe I'm ignoring you on purpose. It's just not the time for that. So, but we'll have another opportunity to hear from you. So, anybody else?
The only other thing I was going to say is throughout that process, we've really encouraged other developers to do outreach in the neighborhood, to work with the neighbors to make it the best possible development it can be with some of these concerns in mind. Because sometimes developers don't always know, oh, there's this one issue or there's this other thing happening or we need to look out for this problem. So that's what I would encourage as well, is that we have asked that of other developers. So I just highly encourage doing outreach to those neighbors to talk about, like, well, maybe the dog park shouldn't be on this corner, maybe it should be on the other corner. Or, there's other kinds of issues that sometimes come up that the neighbors can actually be really great advocates and helpers in figuring out the best solution possible. So that's what I would recommend as well.
Chair, if I have,
Yes.
I do have, I just want to clarify the R2S zone has to be subdivided, or I mean, individually platted, meaning a developer isn't going to go through this process to put 32 individual plats on this area, because then they have to all be different corporations and they all have to have different tax ID numbers and all of that. And so I think it gives me, I guess I like this zone, that it actually gives me an encouraging feeling that these will be for sale products, not some of the words that you guys were using, but apartments and townhomes that are not for sale products. So that's what this zone is created to do, is to really give it a for sale product. I might have said that incorrectly, but hopefully I'm close.
We know what you mean. Councilmember Graff?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just going to add, it's been my recent experience in visiting with members of the community as I was running for this office. Number one on front porches, what's with all of these apartment buildings? And it was almost like a swear word. It was toxic to say apartment building. Here is the alternative to an apartment building. This is a place where people can own and live and build equity and show pride in their neighborhood by taking care of something that they own rather than rent. And it's not another apartment building that is perhaps lacking personality and character and care invading our neighborhoods, but somebody that is going to own and come in and invest their hard-earned money in a place to live and make a contribution to the community that they live in. That's my belief. And this isn't affordable housing as I would, it's not, I tend to associate affordable housing with low-income housing. This is attainable housing. If 75% of the folks in Utah that own a home couldn't afford to buy the home that they're living in, that says something. We really need to work hard to create an opportunity, and it looks different than the first house I bought, and maybe the first house others bought, but this is an opportunity to make a purchase and create some equity so that they can get onto this ownership ladder and move up over the course of their working lifetimes. So I believe that R2S is a great tool to accomplish the goal of ownership in Ogden rather than more apartment buildings.
I'll give that a hear.
I just wanted to comment. I appreciate everyone coming and sharing their concerns. It is a tough issue, and change is definitely hard. I also want to point out that we have some amazing people from the city in the room listening, and those that need to hear about slippery hills and things like that, they're here listening to that, and I know they're taking notes, and hopefully there'll be ways that those things can be addressed. I'm not promising anything. I'm just saying that I know that they're here listening. The other thing that I thought was interesting in our work session on this last week, I think, I had received some communication about some, troubling things going on 8th Street, which is just north of this area. And obviously a concern whenever public safety is there. And when we invest in the community, when there's new development, I think that does help lift up the area in a way that could potentially drive out some of those things that are causing problems. And so that's sort of what I took away a little bit on that, is I think if we can develop a community where there's more of that individual ownership, there's pride, we're enhancing the community that way, then that should also translate into more safety and potentially weeding out some of those issues. Councilmember Heyer mentioned, the empty ground. We've seen that in other areas in our neighborhoods where there's just places where people can kind of get off the public roadway a little bit, and who knows what they're doing. So yeah, I guess those are some of my thoughts there. So at this point, I don't know if there's any other discussion or if we want to look at a motion. And
Chair, I'll try a motion. We'll see how it goes. I will make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2024-3.
okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember Graff to adopt proposed ordinance 2024-3, and this is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Graff.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Vice Chair White.
Aye.
Chair Ritchie.
Aye, and that passes.
Chair, I would ask as kindly as I know how to the developers to do everything you can to make sure that whatever tools you can harness to make sure that does become owner in as long a perpetuity as possible. That would be what my request would be.
Okay. All right, thank you. We are now moving on to 5B, and we'll invite Brandon Ripien to come and address the council on the proposed zone text amendments for group dwelling units.
Thank you, Chair Ritchie and council. So the council met to review the group dwelling ordinance amendment on January 25th or 23rd, I should say. And there were 3 items that were discussed that you had requested to make modifications to. And so I'm bringing those to you today. So the follow-up items, the first one was building separation between, or rear-to-rear building separation, architectural details, and mix of building types. So the adjustment that was made was the original proposal was to have a rear-to-rear separation of 20 feet, and the city council suggested that was a little too narrow. So the proposal is to do a 30-foot rear-to-rear separation between buildings, as well as a 10-foot side-to-side setback that would not increase. So that was one of the things that was discussed, is if we do require a larger rear-to-rear separation, that that can remain regardless of the building increasing in height. The other setbacks would be adjusted, and I'll show you this next graphic. So this graphic shows how that would adjust. So if structures are above 2.5 stories, then the setback would increase 5 feet for front to front or front to rear, and also front to side and side to rear. So in those circumstances, the separation would increase, but for the side to side and the rear to rear, the separation would continue to be the same, and that was based on your recommendation. The second item was the requirement for a covered porch, stoop, or portico, or similar. Originally, it required 4 architectural detail elements, but it was brought up that the covered porch or stoop or portico was a required element, and so we reduced the additional architectural detail elements to be 3 instead of 4. And then the last item was the mix of building types. And the proposal is to require 2 building types for the R2 zone if it is larger than 4 acres, and then also 2 building types for other neighborhood and mixed use group dwellings. And the last one was 3 building types if the neighborhood or mixed use group dwelling is 4 acres or larger. And we did also add 4 different types of building types that are available to choose. And those include great houses, stacked units, so that would be a duplex, triplex, or fourplex that is stacked. Also garden apartment or courtyard dwelling, and then single family dwelling. That's just that list again. So these are the different alternate building types. And then we talked about the idea of allowing for alternate building designs. So there are 2 circumstances where we would allow building design to be to qualify as a different building type. And so if a building has varied in height by at least 8 feet or 1 story, has a different roof style, different colors, siding materials, projections, porch or entry feature, and at least 2 other architectural details. So that's one circumstance where 2 of the same building type could be, 2 of the same building could be considered 2 building types because the design is varying enough to be considered different. And then this was a second option, so a single family row house. If the units have a vertical break in the roof as well as a vertical offset, horizontal vertical offset, and there are different color schemes, siding materials, and at least 2 architectural details that are different from each unit, then that would also be considered 2 different building types. And those are all the changes that I've made to the proposed ordinance for the group dwellings. And any questions or comments? So our recommendation would be to adopt the proposed ordinance.
We have opted to receive public input on this item as well.
The petitioner's here.
Oh, the petitioner's
Yeah,
here.
I was hoping
sorry.
we could listen to
Yes,
Mr. Bastian.
He's hiding behind the
Yeah.
Good guy. Here, so give me thank you. Yeah, so we could.
My name is Mike Bastian. I'm at 7721 South, 1750 East in South Weber. I just had a question. My eyes don't work so good. If it's under 4 acres, is it, Brandon, is it, oh, I don't know. Oh, there you are.
Way to go.
If it's under 4 acres, it requires 2 different housing types. I thought it was 2 acres to 4 acres. It was two different housing
So if
types.
it's less than 4 acres, it's 2 building types. If it's more than 4 acres, then it's 3 building types, if it's not R2.
So even if you're on 1.5 acres or something, you have to have 2 different building types.
Correct.
Okay, that's just different. I thought it was 2 acres to 4 acres. It was 2 different building types. 4 acres and above, it was 3. So that's always been a house. I was under the impression that a smaller development was 1 building type, but maybe not. So,
If it's less than 1 acre, it is, let me look.
no, it's okay. I thought it was 2 acres or less. So that was my question is, I thought 2 acres or less, it was 1 building type, but I might have just been mistaken. I thought I've understood it pretty good, but maybe I don't.
Mike, it looks like the distinction between 2 different building types is pretty small, though. So it could be essentially the same building, but you've added a few features that are different, makes it a different building type. That's what I think I heard him say.
It could,
that was gonna be my-
be. It could be. It could be. What am I looking for? So styles and types are different. You can do those different variations to count as types, but it's a difficult thing to reach, some of those things that are being required. So, and is that just in the R2 zone that those variations are allowed, or is it in all of the zones?
All of the zones.
That's in all of the zones, okay. So, yeah, I guess that was my confusion. I thought it was 2 acres to 4 acres. You had 2 types, but was that the old code?
No, Barton.
Okay.
You are correct. So if it's 2 acres or less, it does not require additional building types. You can just do 1.
Okay.
So that we just need to change that?
No, that's what it says.
Oh, it says it in there.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'm good then.
Thank you. Good. Okay.
Okay. All right, we'll accept public input on this. Anybody online or in person? Here we go.
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. Same comments as before. I support this creative thinking and looking at new ways, but I highly encourage everyone to make sure that we have the entire solution of not just smaller lots and smaller buildings, but allowing smaller units within those buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel.
Rick Southwick, I just want to comment. I think this is a very positive addition to what we're offering. I appreciate, we've had a number of meetings as the Planning Commission, and appreciate Mr. Bastian's involvement in bringing these changes forward. I think it's going to enhance what we can do in the city, so I speak in support of it.
Thank you. Any other comments from the group here?
Hi, Travis Pate. I had the opportunity to go through the November training, which was City Council and Planning Commission. So I think that was a pretty remarkable slideshow to say, where are we going, where do we want to be? And so I congratulate staff on putting that together. I think the dynamic to me is this rezoning too. It goes planning, so to speak, Planning Commission, and then back to you guys. Neighborhood development was not involved. Neighborhood development has done how much in this area for infill? You're saying this is infill, yet neighborhood development.
So Travis, sorry to interrupt. This is regarding the group dwellings.
Oh, group dwelling. Sorry, I thought it was public comment.
We're not at quite to public comment yet.
All right,
so
sorry. I'll come back to that one.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else that would like to address on group dwellings? Okay, any other questions for petitioner, for Brandon, for each other?
No, just a quick comment, but thank you for helping us through this whole big picture. So thank you. Your patience has been great.
Okay. If no other comments, I'd entertain a motion on this item.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve proposed ordinance 2024-4.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Chaburka and a second by Councilmember Blair to adopt proposed ordinance 2024-4. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Graff.
Yes.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Vice Chair White.
Aye.
Chair Ritchie.
Aye, and that passes. Thank you.
Chair, I also do want to kind of echo what Marcia said, that, it was nice that you're on the other side of the street, from these issues from us. And I loved that you were involved the way you were, and that you made the petition, because, it's going to be universally used, not just for you. I love this concept, this whole plan, the way it came together. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Councilmember Heyer. Next, we have reports from administration. Jeremy Smith, Community Development Manager, will speak to the proposed Synchrony Bank line of credit reapproval.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeremy Smith. I'm Manager for Community Development. I'm here to talk to you about our Synchrony Bank loan renewal we're proposing. So Ogden City has been partners with Synchrony Bank since 2011. So we have a relationship with them that we use and have a line of credit that finances our construction projects for our infill and rehab and renovation homeownership programs. Approximately $15.3 million worth of construction financing has taken place since 2011. That equates to 121 homes during this time. And with our relationship with Synchrony Bank, it does meet their CRA requirements, which establishes favorable terms for us, which include the principal amount is $1,400,000 for a revolving line of credit. The way it works is we take loans on disbursement against this line of credit, and we have a 2-year period which we can do that. So every 2 years, we have to renew this agreement. We've been doing it since 2011, and we're coming up on the 2nd year, so that's why we're here today. The interest rate for this is based on the secured overnight financing rate, also known as SOFR. This will be a change from the last 2 years where it was based on the BSBY, which stands for the Bloomberg Short-Term Bank Yield. We found out what that stands for. Yeah, so the BSBY is actually going to become not available. It's being discontinued by Bloomberg, and so Synchrony has opted to go for the industry standard of SOFR, which is established and set up by the Federal Reserve. And the security that goes along with this line of credit is $350,000, which already exists in a deposit bank account at the city. And then the way those funds, when those funds are used to build the homes, once the home sells, the proceeds of that sale go to repay the loan and the interest that goes along with that. Synchrony's been a great partner with the city. We work well with them and look forward to continuing our relationship with them. But happy to take any questions you have about this program.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any questions? You might have had them all answered earlier today.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Chair, I'd make a motion that we adopt resolution 2024-1.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Myers to adopt proposed ordinance 2024-1. Proposed resolution 2024-1. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Graff.
Yes.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Vice Chair White.
Aye.
Chair Ritchie.
Aye, that passes. Thank you. Okay, this is the opportunity for public comments, the opportunity to address the council regarding concerns or ideas or on any topic. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and please state your name for the record.
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. I was really, really pleased to hear Councilmember Heyer, Councilmember Graff, and Councilmember Chaburka ask questions during the work session that had to do with the renewal of the agreement that you just passed. Obviously, I'm supporting that we do need that agreement passed, but I would really like to lift up the comment that Councilmember Chaburka brought up about a revolving loan fund. There is no reason Ogden cannot have its own revolving loan fund and the line of credit and then transition to having our own revolving line or revolving loan fund. And I say this having taken 2 of the classes of 6 required to be an economic developer professional offered by CDFA, and I have no interest in being an economic developer. I just took those classes so that I could understand this. And this is a book from the last class I took, which is a $125 book. It's written by Toby Rittner, who's the president of the CDFA, who has also been on the 2 presidential economic development transition teams. This guy knows his stuff. And many cities across the United States are starting their own revolving loan funds. And they're also branching out and partnering with counties and other entities to become their own CDFI. We have a big enough budget, we have a large enough tax base that this is something that we could easily do. And then you have so much more control, and it saves the city money. I mean, we do pay for that, and yes, we get reimbursed for it, but if we don't have to make money, we can offer that money at a lower rate through our own revolving loan fund for housing, or partnering with, there's actually a couple of developers that are looking into forming their own CDFI. And Salt Lake City is forming a CDFI. And for those listening online, I'm sorry for the alphabet soup. CDFI is essentially a way to be accredited federally, so you can loan money. You're not a bank, but it allows you to access funds and take money from investors to grow Ogden. And I keep moving towards and reminding everybody that we have that sporting event in 10 years. And we have to solve our housing problem now before we move and transition into building infrastructure for the sporting event, which is going to be a big, big, big leap. And you can't set up a revolving loan fund and you can't start a CDFI quickly. It's going to take some time. So I encourage you to look in that, and I'm so grateful that you were asking questions to make sure that we're verifying that it doesn't mean that you don't trust the administration. It just means that you're doing your due diligence, and I appreciate that as a taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Travis Pate, right time, sorry. Standing in the hall too long, you just miss what points there. I think, like I said, the training dynamic and the slides that were there, if those of you that haven't had the opportunity, I would suggest possibly just going back, obviously, for the minutes, but then also the PowerPoints still online. I'm reminded of basically the Riverfront Redevelopment Project area, how many incantations it had, and then even the dynamic of what's coming along with when Mountain America Credit Union came in, and how they were to fit into the property and design standards. And I think the same thing, it's remarkable to me that we have almost greater design standards for things that are scraped and then rebuilt than our current existing infrastructure. And that's tragic to me with regards to historic preservation. As I alluded to in my comments about the Lynn Community Plan and the possibility of this rezone, there are some major things in there, and yet nowhere in the information sent to you about this rezone did it say how many other discussions are happening about the Lynn Community Plan. So I thought if we go on holistic medicine and I go in with a sore toe and the doctor's like, okay, we're only going to treat your toe, but we're not going to treat your diabetes. It's a whole system thing. So if we're going to just go over and rezone my big toe so it has a new little compartment off one of my shoes, what are we doing? We miss the fact that the system has some major concerns. And so in the slideshow, it talks about expertise. And yet in one of the recent Landmarks Commission meetings, planning staff suggested that
only the Landmarks Commission should be allowed to make nominations to the historic resource page or the owner themselves. So that means you as a body are out because you suggested First Security be saved. So, only Landmarks Commissions, those are the only professionals we have in the community? And we have an amazing community that has a lot of expertise. And until we're willing to bring everybody to the table, such as actually Councilmember Graff, as Commissioner Graff, got to meet a lot of the individuals and see that Lynn community plan coming together. So unless we take it as a holistic aspect and say, where are we going? To me, I would revisit the zone thing either on March 12th or March 19th, because it should have a conditional overlay exactly like the Bingham Fort Second and Wall did, which is also in the Lynn community plan. Because then it's never coming back to you otherwise. And they can build all 42 units, even though they promise you, because the only thing Landmarks Commission reviews is it an allowable use? And so that dynamic to me is, this was majorly flawed because all the information about everything that's been happening in the Lynn community plan hasn't been taken care of. So thank you. And revolving loan fund, we have a master over here with revitalization funds. So if we could just tap on the city's resources.
Thanks, Travis. Okay, we'll go online now. We have three comments online. Go ahead.
Hello? Oh,
Yep.
Hi. Heath Sato, Ogden resident. I was just following up again on the one of them was the Q Factor project in the BOE, and to see where that stands. And also, Q Factor was involved, it wasn't addressed before, they were involved in the empty lot just below 25th on Wall that was presented as Highline Partners LLC. But the projects presented as representative of their work by the former director of CED were those of Q Factor in Salt Lake City. So I assume they were just financiers working with Q Factor, just not in name. And given that project has not moved forward at all since it was approved quite a while ago, I'm going to assume that land giveaway has also been revoked, but I'd like to be sure they don't just sell it off like has happened with the Brown Ice Cream Building. And regarding that, I would like to follow up on that as well, because I was told that was going to be looked into further. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks, Heath. Next up, we have Teresa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Teresa Bramwell, Salt Lake City resident and lifetime Ogden City landowner. I apologize for not being there today. I am in a meeting in Salt Lake and I've stepped out on the patio so I could talk to you. But I did listen to parts of this meeting today, and my observations about it are that I'm hearing a lot of concerns from women, especially about the project that the gentleman on the Planning Commission is involved with. Some specific things that I heard were that the prior property owner, who was a woman, was only able to build a very specific size of house on that lot and maintain that the rest of the lot not be used. And also some issues about parking on the street and the amount of parking for the project. And I don't know, it strikes me that I'm seeing a lot of men getting up in your meetings that are able to get a lot of things accomplished. And I'm hearing a lot of women being very concerned about them, like their lives are going to be or have been diminished by what is being accomplished by the men. It just seems to happen over and over and over and over and over again in Ogden. And that's my comment. I appreciate you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a phone caller, I think *9 to talk. *6 to raise your hand, *9 to talk.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
My name is Linda Sanchez, and I was listening to the work session today, and it was about the short-term rentals, which I know you guys are going to continue. With that being said, my sister, she actually used a short-term rental a while back ago. Her husband passed away, and she has older children, and she didn't have enough room for all of them to stay at her house. So she actually got a short-term rental so that all the family could be there together. Now, with that being said, you know, the neighborhood that it was in had, you know, a large families there too. And so like you would never be able to tell whose car would be parked out front. And with that being said, you know, there was, you know, everybody wants to come and go skiing and everything. So, you know, I went up to watch movies and stuff with them. And I just would hate this is such a family-oriented state. I know that sometimes, of course, we don't want people partying all night, but sometimes we don't want to take away also from people's memories, people's families that are people, I mean, nowadays, you know, I mean, Utah has big families. Take away from the family experience as well. So I understand that you guys need to think about everyone, and I just would hate for the bad opportunities just to rule out everybody's opportunities. And I would think that parking on a public street would not be a problem. In fact, maybe, you know, like it was probably somebody that didn't like somebody that, you know, we shouldn't be restricting that as well. I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't block somebody's driveway. That seems slightly offensive. But I feel like there's some situations that we need to kind of be careful about what we choose to make laws about. So just think about that when you guys go forward. Also, I also drove by that Chester, and when you guys go forward with that as well, I actually was thinking there is no way that they're going to be able to put this in here. And my question was also a fire truck. So when you guys go forward, I'm not opposed to having people have home ownership because I think that's wonderful, and I think we need to give people opportunities. But we also just need to make sure people are safe at the same time. And that is all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Linda. Any other comments? Okay. Yeah, I think just to address that last point, with that development, there will need to be all those studies done that would have to address the public safety issues and getting fire in and all that. So I think that's still to come. Would you like to address, Mayor, the Q Factor project and the questions brought up on, or the projects that Q Factor was related in and or involved in?
Yep, happy to. Actually, on the Q, so I'll defer to Gary on the Brown's ice cream and the Q Factor questions just for updates. There are two things we've been working on. I just want to make sure I get the details right, and no better way to do that than through him. But before we go to Gary, I wanted to make a comment, if it's okay.
Sure.
Having sat in both seats now, I'll just tell you that tonight it was easier sitting in this seat than it was sitting in yours. And the R2S is a zoning designation that has a ton of power and utility in our community and across the state. Just being involved in the statewide conversations, like many of you guys also are, those are the kinds of ordinances and decisions that need to be made in order to get ahead of our housing crisis. And I just want to let you guys know that we recognize the challenge that puts you guys in, and there were a lot of staff here today listening to that conversation and watching it happen for the first time, and we were all taking a lot of note about what we can do on the administrative side to try and help facilitate solutions for the neighbors and for you guys as well. So just want to let you guys know that we recognize the challenge that you guys are in. Also recognize the level of consideration and the depth of policy that each of you guys have on the issue of housing. It was the number one issue brought up during the campaign, you're right. So anyway, I just wanted to commend you guys for the hard decision that you made, but also the work that you guys have done before tonight in order to understand the implications. And we commit to do the work on our end to try and help facilitate your decisions in the future. And Gary, if you could take the Q Factor and Brown's Ice Cream Building.
So on Brown Ice Cream, a city representative has contacted the second owner, the new owner of that property, and they have expressed their commitment to follow the requirements that the prior owner was required to do, and that would require them to finish out the development, and get a certificate of occupancy by this fall. But they also note that that's going to be a tough thing to pull off, and so we're in discussions about whether to extend that time period or not, and under what circumstances we might do that. Regarding Q Factor, we've sent out a notice of default to the contractor, the developer in that case, and we're waiting for a response from them. And that response will probably come in the next 3 weeks or so. And then from there, that frees us up to take certain actions depending on their response.
Maybe just a point of clarity on those properties, the ownership of the properties wasn't necessarily conveyed at the time or until or maybe explain how the ownership of those properties that were
Brown Ice Cream?
No, on the Q Factor,
I don't think they are conveyed. We still own those. Yeah,
correct. That was my understanding as well.
Yeah.
So,
and so it's just the point that if we want to move on to a new developer, we have to finalize our relationship with the old developer, and that's what we're working on.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for that clarity.
If I may, for clarity, the Q Factor, this is the Stockyards building, the old administrative
Exchange.
building.
Yep.
This is 144 25th Street as well?
No. Well, it is the parent company of the builder of that particular property.
Okay, and then the apartment building on 12th Street, is that the same group? It seems to be kind of halted in its footprints too.
So Q Factor owns a construction company, or did own, now a defunct construction company that's out of business, and they were the construction company on those two properties.
What's going on 12th Street?
We're working with the developer, who's still in business, to come up with a plan to update their plans, resolve the design issues, and I'll be talking with them again tomorrow. We're working out some details to have it redesigned to make sure it can structurally be rebuilt, and a few other requirements that were intended in the beginning approval but hadn't followed through to the end, and so we're working on all that. But they've told us they have an intent to rebuild and to start soon.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. I don't know if you had any other additional comments. Okay. Comments from council members.
I've got one, if we could. One of the comments that Mr. Smith made in our work session, and then it was kind of driven home again with regard to our revolving line of credit, is things have changed. So we've been borrowing approximately $1.4 million for the last 12 years or so to redevelop our neighborhoods. And in light of the times have changed, maybe we need to consider what and how we might go about changing with the times. So do we need to grow our revolving line of credit to take care of the work that we need to? Because a dollar doesn't go as far today as it did 12 years ago, right? So is there something that we can do to be sure that we're keeping up with the changing times around what we're trying to do with that budget and with that revolving line?
Yeah.
Sorry. We might have missed this earlier, but tomorrow, just for mention, there is Breeze's first flight or incoming and outgoings happening tomorrow, and there's a ribbon cutting and a big celebration tomorrow at the Ogden Airport. So that's exciting. Just wanted to make mention of that also.
Thank you. I think that starts at 11, right? Yeah. Okay.
Quick comment.
Yes.
So I just want to applaud the work that's been going on with Wildlife Rehab Center and the Dino Park. As a point, hopefully we don't have to read that you've come to a compromise in the paper, but might know about it sooner than the paper. So, but thank you for working on that. I know. That's good, and I appreciate that there's a compromise and they're going to have a permanent home. So.
Okay.
Any update on the water line and the funding through the legislature?
Yeah, we're coming into the kind of that executive approach cycle, so things are getting very real. It's a great proposal. There's a lot of support for it. Where it's hard is it's the first time doing something that I think a lot of people are going to want to do too, and the legislature wants to make sure they get it right for future proposals as well, since this is kind of precedent setting, and we're being really mindful that we're not committing for too long of a term, so that we're not painting ourselves at any corners. So there's some back and forth happening kind of daily, hourly about the amount we've asked for and the amount of the term, the length of the term. But we'll land in a good spot, and we'll let you know before you read it in the paper where it lands.
Thank you. Take a motion for adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Blair to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Good night.